Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss one of the very sensitive ethical issue known as euthanasia or mercy killing. Now, before understanding the complexity and other related issues involved with this ethical dilemma, let us first inquire about what do we mean by ethics. Ethics, as we all know, is a branch of philosophy which deals with the study of morality. So, in order to understand what is ethics, we need to understand what is morality. Morality, by its definition, says that it is the study of what is right and what is wrong. So, because there are so many theories involved regarding the subject matter called morality, we used to say that we have better decision making sense because we have gone through so many theories which teaches us which path to choose and with which path to avoid. But as we can talk about many ethical dilemmas, not only about euthanasia, but there are many others like abortion, surrogacy, suicide, and many other sensitive issues, there is one thing which should not and which should never be neglected, and that is context. Ethics is something which is very much related, very much focused upon the circumstances and context. That is why we are emphasizing on the notion that morality or ethical principles can never be standardized, can never be universalized. I'll just take an example. Suppose it is being taught since childhood that yes, you should be truthful, right? You should never lie to anyone at any, circumstance. Now, just hypothetically imagine a situation. Suppose there's a innocent person, right? He's being chased by a criminal, might be a murderer, right? So he happened to knock at your door, and he wanted you to help him by giving, a short duration of refuge. And you obviously, because of the nature of having a compassionate heart, you allow him to get inside your house. Now, after a while, the murderer came in, right? He asked you about the same innocent person he's chasing. Now, at that point, will you follow the principle of truthfulness, that you should never lie to anyone at any circumstances? Or you give certain weightage to the circumstances and analyze the sensitivity of the situation. That is what this ethical dilemma is, right? Truth or truthfulness, or you can say rightness or wrongness of actions, right? That is very relative term. What is right and what is wrong is a relative term. It a lots of subjectivity is involved while analyzing any ethical dilemmas. What is right for me might not be right for you, right? But we need to analyze the context. Can never deliver any judgment without seriously evaluating the circumstances. Now, on that note, I shall share my PPT with all of you, which can surely help you to understand the very basic content and the basic understanding of what you mean by euthanasia. Recording in progress. Yeah, so I hope all of you can see this slide. Euthanasia, a moral dilemma. Why it is a dilemma? Or in fact, what do you mean by a dilemma? Dilemma is a situation where you need to choose which side to opt or which option you will go. Right, in order to choose some directions or the better option, you need to evaluate the pros and cons of the situation. In ethics, no side is could be treated as white and black. There is always the gray area which you need to analyze very, very deeply. Right. So on that note, let me define what you mean by euthanasia. Yeah, so what will you do? Rather, I would like to state here, etymologically, this word euthanasia is originating from a Greek word called euthanatos, which means easy death. Now, the meaning or the definition of euthanasia is the act or practice of killing or permitting the death of hopelessly sick or injured individuals in a relatively painless ways of reasons for reasons of mercy. This simply means that suppose, you're talking about a patient, not any patient, someone who is, ill for decades, right? Terminally ill patients who is constantly suffering with lots of pain. So, as for that particular person, if you are helping that particular person to ease their pain or relief from, that long-lasting suffering, that is an act of euthanasia. Now, where will, the dilemma comes? It feels that the moment I'm explaining things that you should, come out and try to relieve that person by using euthanasia, it seems that there is no complexity. Yes, you should have a compassionate heart and grant euthanasia under such circumstances. But in this condition, suppose you have a family member or a very dear person, right, who is suffering, and his consent is available. He wanted to die, he or she wanted to die, but he is very close to you. Will you be able to take such decisions, strong decisions, in order to help that person ease their pain? So that is something which we need to think about. Unless and until we are not under such situation, we can never do justice to the particular case. Now there are certain causes which leads euthanasia. What happens, under what condition, people actually start to think about such options. First, insufferable pain in a chronic or untreatable condition, for example, cancer. We all are aware that the pain which a cancer patient goes through is very hard to imagine, right? What if that person who is, being on medical, advices or by the advices of many doctors has been declared as untreatable, right? So at that condition, we can think of choosing this option called euthanasia or mercy killing. Secondly, a person may wish to not be a burden on others. See, there is always a concept called dignity of life or dignity to die. And every person aspire to die with certain dignity. Now, here, those people, those patients who are completely dependent upon others for their basic needs, for their basic, necessities, and biological, processes. So they feel that, how long they will be, there existing in this world, doing nothing, which is a sign of liveliness. So they actually, sometimes aspire to have euthanasia. Secondly, sense of loss of dignity when persisting with difficult physical conditions, especially physical conditions. A patient who is paralyzed, who is, might not be having sensations to do particular, biological phenomena, they might feel that, it is better to end their life. And lastly, when a terminally ill person desires to get insurance for loved ones, of course, getting a medical treatment or medical assistance for longer period of time, just imagine more than 10 years, 14 years, 15 years, is a big, pressure on the family members as well. You need to spend a lot of money, right? A lot of resources. But if there is a hope, those resources being spent is still considerable. But if doctor is constantly saying that we cannot say anything or there is no hope, the patient is, giving us no sign of recovery. Under that conditions, the patient who might be associated with some, relations like father, mother, friend, husband, wife, to their, caretaker or, assistants who is there in the hospital taking all the care of medical bills, they feel that it is better to just, get rid of all these things and get the, insurance for the loved ones. So these are certain situations. These are only few situations in which the patient, want euthanasia. Now, this particular concept become, a little bit complex when we talk about its kinds being available to us. All right. There are types of euthanasia, as you can see in my slide: non-voluntary euthanasia, voluntary euthanasia, and involuntary euthanasia. I would like to start first with voluntary euthanasia. Voluntary euthanasia, as the title suggests, it happens when euthanasia happens as per the consent of the patient. When the consent of the patient is involved, the patient voluntarily, asking for euthanasia, right? Suppose there's a patient who is suffering from cancer, right? And he is in the advanced stage. Doctor has honestly, they have shared their advices and prescriptions saying that it's too late, but still, right, the family members are not giving up. They are trying to keep up the medical treatment, but the pain is really unbearable, right? Under that circumstances, the patient who is suffering from so much pain, he by himself, out of many conditions, like, you can talk about dignity of life, you can talk about uh, dying with dignity. He might be worrying about the expenses being sent on, him, where the hope is nowhere available. And of course, the pain is unbearable. So, because of all these conditions, that patient might give consent for euthanasia. That is voluntary euthanasia. Then, how and who will help the patient to actually get mercy killing? Then there are two kinds of voluntary euthanasia. One is active, the other one is passive. Active euthanasia, when the doctor injects a lethal substance in the patient to end his or her life. Passive euthanasia, when a person or the patient avoids taking possible treatment and eventually, he or she dies. Suppose, that patient might be on some equipment, life supporting equipments like your ventilators, right? So you can simply switch off the ventilator and let the patient die. All right. In India, passive euthanasia is being considered now. All right. Okay, so this is voluntary euthanasia, which is being majorly talked about. Now, there are some trivial cases which are known as non-voluntary euthanasia. In non-voluntary euthanasia, the consent of the patient is not available. Is not available in the sense that consent that patient cannot give. Why? Because he's not in a in a condition to give his or her consent, right? That is why it is known as killing or letting die when patient is unable to express desire, right? The person gave no consent and made no request for killing. Person competent wishes regarding euthanasia are not known. Normally, it is normally conducted when the patient is unconscious. Unconscious, we are not talking about cases where patient is unconscious for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months. Suppose, we are talking about cases where the patient is in coma, right? Or some other similar conditions for decades, all right. And of course, a good team of doctors are available for him or her, and they are saying that, they are not seeing any sign of recovery. So, under that condition, of course, you cannot wait for the consent of the patient. That patient is not in a condition to talk or write or express any such desires. So, in such cases, the family members are the one who decides, right? Now, here, I mean, again, there are gray areas, right? Family members, of course, out of their, compassion, out of their genuine intentions, might be demanding euthanasia so that that patient could be relieved because he's not living a biological life, right? Lively existence that patient is not having. And of course, might be, family will not be a better, is not able to bear the expenses of the medical treatment. All right. But what if the family members are not really willing to take the burden of, supporting and helping that particular patient? They might be becoming very selfish and, doing savings, right? Not really ready to spend so much on that particular patient. So such cases are, subject to many interpretations. So it is recommended that when you try to analyze such cases where consent is not available, we need to think about all the alternatives being possible. All right. Now coming to involuntary euthanasia, which is the last kind of euthanasia. It is performed on a person who is able to give informed consent, but right now is not giving that. Why? Either because they did not choose to die or they were not asked to die. And that is why, in some cases, it is termed as equivalent to murder. Of course, involuntary euthanasia, the patient is not being asked to, analyze and think about the option called euthanasia. He has never asked about it, and he is, in his senses, he can demand, he can give, such consents, but he hasn't given that. But still, the family members or the caretakers or might be doctors, right, are demanding to, end that life. Why? Because obviously, he's taking much time to recover, or family members might be, deceived by some motives. There are many possibilities. So these are the three kinds of euthanasia. And because there are three kinds, and depending upon these three kinds, multiple situations, it is always recommended, even legally, that we cannot refer to one single case uh, where the decision might be taken in favor of giving euthanasia to a particular patient to be the point of reference in all the cases of euthanasia. In ethics, all the cases, all the dilemmas are unique in their own nature. We cannot treat one single example to be applicable to all similar cases. Ethics is always circumstantial, always talk about the context before, delivering a judgment about any dilemma. This is how, with the help of this particular concept, we can analyze and introspect about all other ethical issues, be it abortion, be it surrogacy, be it capital punishment. We cannot simply, shed our responsibility saying yes or no for such, notions. If we are saying yes, it is our responsibility, moral responsibility. Talk about all those options who are supporting my saying. All right. And if I'm opposing, suppose capital punishment for a particular crime, why am I doing that? That answer, that why is being answered when I am truly analyzing the circumstances. All right. And that is where, even cultural subjectivity becomes highlighted. Right, cultural subjectivity is nothing. It is subjectivity which is existing, right, in us. What is good for me might not be good for you. What is beautiful for me might not be beautiful for you. And that is how, depending upon different cultures, we have different standards of morality. All right. And because we have different or relative standards of morality, we cannot say in, making any absolute statements about such dilemmas. Ethical dilemmas are very much available in our, empirical life. All of us, I'm sure we have witnessed, we have been captured by so many dilemmas since childhood. But now it's high time to think about such issues. Think about how, the judgment should be delivered. We should not jump into conclusion because of our inclinations, right? What I believe is not a necessary factor that it should be the rightest, option to be actualized. So that flexibility of mind, that neutrality of mind will be developed by an ethical growth, right? Ethics teaches us to choose what is right and what is wrong, and automatically in turn it shapes our overall personality. So, with this concept of euthanasia, I think we have touched about the very essence of ethics, which is nothing but it's being circumstantial, it's not being absolute. Thank you so much.